Hey Panthers, this video is going to be about finding the area of a trapezoid. So we're going to go step by step through the formula. We're going to look at some of the characteristics of a trapezoid and then how to solve using that formula. So if our Panther is ready, we're going to go ahead and move on to our next slide as he walks across our screen. Let's look at characteristics of a trapezoid. So if you look at the two trapezoids that are drawn, these are both trapezoids. One thing you notice about them, they both have four sides. So it is a four-sided figure. It has two bases. So instead of like a triangle, when you have one base, it has two bases. The top and the bottom, the lines that are parallel to each other, are going to be your bases. So if you look at the top one, you have a base on top, a base on the bottom, and your bottom trapezoid has a base on the top and a base on the bottom. So now let's look at height. Remember we talked about height always being vertical, straight up and down. So height is never going to be slanted. It's never going to be the slanted line. So it's often shown inside the trapezoid. It makes a right angle with the base. So you can look for that upside down T or an L when you're looking for where the height is. Because remember, it's going to be straight up and down. It's always going to be vertical when we're looking for height. So if you look at the top one, your height is that dotted line that's drawn on the inside of the trapezoid. So you have it going straight up and down. On the bottom one, it's actually the line that's part of your trapezoid because you have a straight up and down line that makes a right angle with the base. So that is your height on that second one. All right, so that's the biggest thing you need to remember is that our height is always going to be vertical. It's always going to be up and down. And it's always going to make that right angle. So it looks like our Panther is ready to go. He's already walked across our screen at the bottom, so let's move on. So now we have finding the area of a trapezoid. So, and you know just from doing triangles and rectangles, parallelograms, you know you need to find the formula first. So with a trapezoid, this is the formula that's on your formula chart. You can find it there. All right, so let's look at breaking down that formula. So you have A equals 1/2, then parentheses, B1 plus B2, and H, which basically means the area is going to be equal to 1/2 times base 1 plus base 2 times the height. And when we remember our order of operations, the first thing you would look at is those parentheses where we have base 1 plus base 2. So we would be adding those bases first. You can also write the formula as A equals base 1 plus base 2 times H divided by 2. So area equals the base 1 plus the base 2 times the height, and we can divide it by 2. So remember, multiplying by 1/2 is the same as dividing by 2. One of the most common mistakes that students do make when using the formula is forgetting to complete that step. So they may add the bases, they may multiply the height, and then you're forgetting, they usually will tend to forget the last step where you have to divide by 2. So make sure you always use your 1/2. All right, you're always going to use that. A lot of times we wait till the end and just divide by 2 at the end. All right, our Panther is ready to go, so let's move on to the next one. Now we're going to go through those steps one by one, calculating the area of a trapezoid. Our steps are going to be similar to the steps that we use to find the triangle, area of a triangle. We're going to write down the formula first. So we're going to look it up. It's a trapezoid. We're going to write down that formula. So we have A equals 1/2, base 1 plus base 2 times the height. Or you can write it, like I said, the other way. All right, so let's keep going. Now, second step, we're going to label or identify the two bases and the height. So when we look at this trapezoid that's drawn, we have a base on the top that's 16 centimeters. You have a base on the bottom that's 20. And then when we're looking for our height, that straight up and down line, that dotted line right there, is 8 centimeters, which would be our height. So you need to write them down. Base 1, 16, base 2, 20. It doesn't matter which one you put as base 1 or base 2. You just need to remember that you have those two bases that you need to write down. And the height is 8, because that 15 up there, that is never going to be your height because it is a slanted line. Right? It's not a right angle with either of those bases. Neither one of those make a right angle. All right, so let's keep moving. Our next step, we're going to rewrite the formula, but this time we're going to substitute or plug in the values for the base and the height, right? So this time we have two bases that we're going to be plugging in. So once we plug that in, we still have our area equals 1/2. Our 16, our base 1, goes in place of where the base 1 would be. Our base 2 is 20, so we put that in that space. The height is 8, so the 8 gets plugged in where the h is in our equation. So our next step is going to be solving the equation. Well, when you look at it, the first thing you're going to need to do is take care of those bases. So we're going to add those bases together, and we get 16 plus 20. When we add those two together, we get 36. So now I can rewrite my formula. Now that I've figured that part out, I'll write it again. Now I have 1/2 times 36 times 8. So this time, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that 36 times 8, and I'm going to figure out what that is first. So I get 36 times 8, and it's equal to 288. So you see how we took that 36 and the 8 right here, and we just multiplied it together, just like our formula said. The thing that we have left now, when we rewrite it again, we're going to put that 288 in that space. So now all we have left is the 1/2 times 288. And remember, since we're multiplying by 1/2, we can take that 288 and we can divide it by 2. All right, so 288, when we divide it by 2, we get 144. So the area of this trapezoid is 144 centimeters squared. Always written in square because it's area. Area will always be written in square units. All right, our panther is ready to go, so let's move on to our next slide. We're going to break down the steps. Just as a reminder, what are the steps that we're taking? Well, first, write down the formula. If you don't write it down, it's really easy to forget steps. If you miss a step, you'll probably get the area incorrect. So step 2, label or identify the bases and the height. So 2 bases and the height. Got to label those. So rewrite that formula, substituting or plugging in the values for those bases and the height. Last step, solve the equation, right? Just like we did on the previous slide. Now, one other thing I want you guys to look at is, how do I find the height of a trapezoid when the area is already known? All right, we did something similar to this when you guys were looking at parallelograms also. The steps are still going to be the same. We're going to write down the formula for the area of a trapezoid. So we write down our formula at A equals 1/2 base 1 plus base 2 times the height. Second step, label or identify the information you know. All right, so we're going to pay close attention to what do I know looking at that diagram. So some of the things I know is I know one of the bases is 9. I know the other base is 12. But I don't know what the height is. All right, so I can write down those things that I know so far. I know the area is 63 because it tells me right here. So for my A, it's going to be equal to 63. We'll call base 1 9, and base 2, we'll write that in as 12. And my height is what I don't know, because when you look up there at that 8 that they give you, that's not going to be your height, because again, that's a slanted line. It does not make a right angle with either one of the bases. So we're never going to use that slant when we're looking for height. All right, so rewrite the formula. This time we're going to substitute or plug in the values for the area and the bases that we already wrote down. So this is what our formula will look like now. That 63 goes in there for that A, because that's our area. The 9 goes in the place of B1. The 12 goes in the place of B2. So now I have this 63, I have 1/2 times 9 plus 12 times H. Okay, so my next step is to solve the equation. So like we did when we were just solving for area, we're going to do the bases first. So we're going to add those bases together in order to start solving this problem. So 9 plus 12 is going to give us 21. So after that's done, I'm going to rewrite it, putting the 21 in the place of where the 9 and the 12 were. So now I have 63 equals 1/2 times 21 times H. So the next step that I can do is I can look at that 21 and that 1/2. And remember, if we're multiplying by 1/2, that means I can just divide by 2. So I can take that 21, divide it by 2, and I get 10.5. Once I get 10.5, again, just like we did on our other example, we're going to plug that in the place that we just figured out, right? So now I have 63 equals 10.5 times H. So you may start to recognize this as an equation that we've worked out before using box method, right? Because we did a lot of those. We practiced with a lot of those. So we're going to use box method to solve this one. But a lot of times it's easier if we rewrite the equation if we need to. If we're used to seeing it as 10.5 times H equals 63, then we can rewrite it that way so that it's easier for us to work with those numbers. So we know we're going to have 2 boxes. We'll draw our 2 boxes and our 63, because it's all by itself, on one side of the equal sign will go in our first box. Now we're going to look in the left side of that equation where it says 10.5 times H. So I need to think, what is the opposite of multiplying? So what is the inverse operation? And that's going to be dividing. So we're going to take that 63, divide by 10.5. So if you're putting it in your calculator, make sure you put the 63 in first, divided by the 10.5, and you get 6. So we can answer our question now. The height is 6 feet. So I already determined that the height of the trapezoid is 6 feet. All right. And there goes our panther, guys. So I think we are ready to move on to the next slide. This next one is just my thank you, right? We always put in the sources that we use, the things that we were able to borrow from people. So our presentation template was Slides Carnival. And the photographs in the template are by Unsplash. And the nice thing is these are free resources that they're letting us use. And so we do greatly appreciate that from them. So here comes our panther. We are moving on. So if you guys have any questions, let Miss Casanova and I know, right? You can message us through Google Classroom, or you can get on Zoom with us to talk to us about it. So basically, in conclusion, have a great day. So have an awesome Panther Day. I hope you guys are doing well at home. And